Read one book a day, and tonight we're diving into The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry. Do you also repeat the same daily routine, living a monotonous life, gradually forgetting who you are, the passions and regrets of the past, and how to love and reconcile with yourself? We hide our true selves behind a mask, using numbness and alienation to escape the past and regrets we dare not face. Just like the protagonist of this book, who in his later years has had his edges smoothed by life and his tenderness trapped by guilt. The author, Rachel Joyce, is a senior BBC radio drama writer with 20 years of acting experience. This book is her debut work, shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize longlist, winning the National Book Award for New Writer of the Year, and translated into nearly 40 languages, warming countless confused people around the world. Tonight, let's walk into Harold Fry's story, and also into our own hearts. Harold Fry, a 65-year-old retired man, lives in Kingsbridge, Devon, in the south of England. His life is dull and tedious. On the day he retired, there were no colleagues to see him off. No flowers or blessings, only a simple card. It seemed that he had never been truly needed by anyone, nor had he ever opened his heart to embrace anyone. Harold's daily life is full of desolation. Every morning, he wakes up on time, looks at his wife Maureen beside him, but rarely speaks to her. They share the kitchen and dining table, yet they are like strangers who do not interfere with each other, with only the soft clink of tableware during meals. Maureen always sits at the other end of the table, combing her hair or clearing the tableware with her back to him. No extra expression on her face, but unspeakable exhaustion and resentment hidden in her eyes. Harold knows clearly that this alienation is decades of estrangement, like a thick layer of ice, freezing the once tenderness and the beating of their hearts. Harold's heart hides too many unspeakable regrets, the core of which is his son David. David was their only child, who committed suicide due to depression many years ago. To this day, he dare not recall David's appearance, or even enter David's old room. That room still remains as it was when David left, as if the owner had only gone out temporarily. But he knows in his heart that David will never come back. Countless late nights, he always wakes up, with David's desperate eyes repeatedly appearing in his mind, questioning himself whether he was too strict, whether he ignored his inner world, whether he chose to escape when he needed companionship the most. These questions are like sharp knives, torturing him day and night, trapping him in the quagmire of self-denial. I am not a good father, nor a good husband. Harold often denies himself like this. He thinks that David's death and his alienation from Maureen are all his faults. He is cowardly and timid, does not know how to express his emotions, only knows how to escape when encountering problems, and hides all his emotions in his heart. When he was young, he did a boring job in a brewery just to support his family, with no ambition at all. He rarely accompanied his wife and son, and even when David was ill, he did not know how to comfort him, only standing awkwardly aside. He was afraid to face David's vulnerability and his own incompetence, so he chose silence and alienation, and finally lost the chance to make up forever. In addition to his regret for his son, Harold also harbors a debt of gratitude to his old friend, Queenie Hennessy. Queenie was his colleague in the brewery when he was young, gentle and kind but introverted. Back then, Harold made a mistake due to a moment of carelessness. and Queenie took all the responsibility for him voluntarily, eventually being fired and never heard from again. For more than 20 years, he has never forgotten Queenie and has wanted to apologize and thank her countless times, but he has never had the courage. He is afraid to face Queenie and afraid to face his own cowardice back then. This debt is like a seed, taking root and sprouting in his heart, torturing him day and night. Days passed by, and Harold spent his later years in numbness and guilt. He thought his life would end like this, with only endless regrets and remorse, until that letter broke the peace. On an ordinary morning, Harold went to the door to get his mail as usual. Most of them were advertisements and bills. He flipped through them habitually until an old letter caught his eye. The envelope was old, the paper was yellowed, the handwriting was unfamiliar. The return address was a hospice in Berwickshire, Scotland, and the sender was exactly Queenie Hennessy. Harold's fingers froze instantly. He held the envelope, trembling all over, his breathing rapid. It had been more than 20 years. He thought he would never hear from Queenie again and never have a chance to apologize. But when he heard from her again, it was such a desperate situation. He opened the envelope tremblingly. The scribbled handwriting showed that the writer was extremely weak. In the letter, Queenie said that she had advanced cancer, had little time left, and could only wait for the end of her life in the hospice. She wrote this letter not to ask for help or complain, but only to tell Harold in the final moments of her life that she did not blame him and had long forgiven him for his mistake back then. She also said that Harold's help in the brewery back then, those gentle moments, supported her through many difficult days. After reading the letter, tears fell from Harold's eyes. He sat on the doorstep, clutching the letter tightly, his body trembling constantly. Guilt, self-blame, regret, and a touch of belated warmth intertwined, wrapping him up. He thought of Queenie's gentle smile back then, her firmness when she took the blame for him, and also his own cowardice and escape. He wished he could appear by her side immediately and say, "I'm sorry," and thank you to her personally. What should I do? Harold kept asking himself in his heart. He wanted to call Queenie, but he had no phone number. He wanted to write a letter, but he didn't know what to write, and even didn't know if it would be in time. He sat on the steps and thought for a long time, until Maureen urged him impatiently to come inside for dinner, and he slowly stood up, with a trace of unprecedented firmness in his eyes. He walked into the house and sat at the dining table, having no appetite at all. Maureen looked at his distraught appearance, did not ask much, only silently cleared the tableware, still alienated. Harold did not care. His mind was only on Queenie's letter and that sentence, "I do not blame you." He suddenly realized that he could no longer escape and had to do something to make up for his debt and calm his own heart. That afternoon, Harold put on his sailing shoes, changed into a light coat, picked up his wallet, keys, and Queenie's letter, and walked out of the house. He did not tell Maureen where he was going or what his purpose was. He just walked north by intuition. He was going to Berwickshire, Scotland, to see Queenie for the last time. Walking out of Kingsbridge, Harold felt both anxious and a touch of relief in his heart. He did not know if he could reach Berwickshire, how many difficulties he would encounter, or if he could see Queenie before she left. He only knew that he had to keep going, not only for Queenie, but also for himself, to make up for his debt break free from the shackles and find the self he had lost. Harold's journey began just like that. He had no professional hiking equipment, no map, no compass, not even a mobile phone. Only ordinary sailing shoes and a coat and a heart full of guilt but firmness, stepping north step by step. He did not know that the distance from Kingsbridge to Berwickshire was 627 miles, which was undoubtedly an impossible challenge for a 65-year-old man who was not in good health. In the early days of the journey, Harold's mood was complicated. He walked on the country path with green fields on both sides, the wind blowing the wheat fields into golden waves and birds singing in the distance. Everything was peaceful and beautiful, but this beauty did not last long. A few hours later, blisters began to form on his feet. Every step was piercingly painful. His legs were heavy, his muscles ached, and his breathing became more and more rapid. Am I being too impulsive? Harold sat on a stone by the road, looking at his blistered feet and having second thoughts. I am already 65 years old. How can I walk such a long way? What if I fall ill and can't reach Berwickshire and Queenie leaves? Countless doubts surged in his heart, and he even wanted to turn around and go home immediately, back to that safe haven where he could escape difficulties. But at that moment, he thought of Queenie's letter, her firmness when she took the blame for him, his own cowardice and escape, and David's desperate eyes. No, I can't give up, he told himself in his heart. Queenie is waiting for me. David is watching me. I can't escape anymore, no matter how hard and tired it is. Even if there is only a glimmer of hope, I must reach Berwickshire and see Queenie for the last time. He gritted his teeth, stood up, patted the dust off his clothes, and continued walking north. He walked very slowly. Every step was difficult, but his eyes became more and more firm. He drank the stream water by the road, looked for wild fruits in the fields to satisfy his hunger, and lay on the grass to sleep under the stars at night. His sailing shoes gradually wore out. His coat was covered with dust. His face was tanned by the wind. His body became weaker and weaker, but his heart became brighter and firmer. During the journey, Harold met all kinds of people. Everyone had their own story, and inadvertently gave him the courage and strength to persist. The first person he met was a young girl at a gas station. That day, Harold was thirsty and exhausted, so he walked into the gas station to buy water. The girl had a gentle smile on her face. Seeing his tired appearance and blistered feet, she took the initiative to come forward and ask, "Sir, are you okay? You look very tired." Harold's heart warmed. This was the first time he felt the warmth of a stranger since he retired. He hesitated for a moment, then told the girl about Queenie's letter and his plan to hike to Berwickshire to see her for the last time. After hearing this, the girl's eyes filled with tears, and she said firmly, "Sir, you will definitely make it, as long as you have faith in your heart. Miss Queenie will be waiting for you, and she will definitely feel your sincerity." She also gave Harold a bottle of water and a piece of chocolate. "Replenish your energy on the way. I wish you a pleasant journey and hope you see Miss Queenie soon." Harold took the water and chocolate, filled with gratitude, bowed deeply to the girl to thank her, then turned around and continued his journey. The girl's words were like a beam of light, illuminating his path forward and strengthening his determination to reach his destination. Continuing forward, Harold met many more people. An old lonely farmer, whose wife had passed away a few years ago, lived alone guarding his farmland. The old farmer invited Harold to his home as a guest, cooked him a hot meal, listened to him talk about his journey and regrets, and said to him, "Young man, everyone has regrets and debts in their hearts, but you can't live in them forever. Taking a brave step forward and doing what you want to do is the best redemption for yourself." Harold was deeply touched. He thought of his alienation from Maureen, his regret for David, and his numbness and escape over the years. He knew that the old farmer was right. He could not be trapped in regret forever. He had to make up for his debt through this journey and learn to reconcile with himself and the past. He also met a young mother having a picnic with her child, who was gentle and optimistic. Seeing Harold's tired appearance, she took the initiative to invite him to join the picnic, handed him a sandwich, and listened carefully to his story. "Sir, you are really brave. Many people never have the courage to make up for their regrets in their whole lives, but you did it." These people and these warm moments during the journey were like stars illuminating Harold's path forward. They also made him gradually open his heart and began to learn to express his emotions, face the past, and accept his own imperfection. While walking, long-buried memories kept emerging in Harold's mind. He thought of when he and Maureen first got married. They were young and gentle, full of longing for the future, and the days they spent together on weekends were full of happiness. But later, with David's birth, the trivialities of life, and his own cowardice and escape, the tenderness between them gradually faded away, leaving only alienation and indifference. He thought of David when he was a child, smart and sensitive, likes reading and painting, always loved to snuggle up beside him to listen to stories. But Harold always refused his companionship because of busy work and irritable mood, and was unwilling to listen to his inner voice. He remembered once David ran over excitedly holding a painting he had drawn, saying, "Dad, look, this is me drawing you. Is it nice?" But at that time, he was upset because of trivial work matters and said impatiently, "It's not nice. Take it away quickly. Don't bother me." David's eyes dimmed instantly, and he silently took the painting and walked into the room, closing the door behind him. Since then, David has become more and more introverted and never took the initiative to look for him or talk about his inner thoughts again. "David, I'm sorry." Harold kept apologizing silently in his heart while walking, tears falling constantly. He knew that a single sentence he said back then had caused great harm to David. His indifference and alienation were also one of the reasons why David became introverted and eventually despaired. He wished he could go back to the past, accompany David to grow up again, and say, "I'm sorry and I love you" to him personally, but it was all too late. Harold also thought of his own childhood. His childhood was not happy. His father was cold and selfish, rarely cared about him, and even often beat and scolded him. His mother left when he was very young and never heard from her after remarrying. The misfortune of his childhood made him cowardly and timid, not knowing how to express emotions, not knowing how to love and be loved. He was afraid of being abandoned and hurt, so he closed his heart, used numbness and alienation to escape all emotions, and finally trapped himself in a cage of loneliness. It turns out that I have been escaping all my life. Harold sighed in his heart. escaping the misfortune of my childhood, my own cowardice, escaping the regret for my son, the debt to Queenie, and the problems between Maureen and me. I thought escaping could solve everything, and numbness could cover up the pain. But I was wrong. Escaping only makes the problems more serious, the pain deeper, and makes me more lonely and lost. This journey was not only a physical walk, but also a spiritual redemption. During the walk, Harold kept reflecting, facing the past directly, and accepting his own imperfection. He understood that life is never smooth sailing. Everyone has regrets, debts, pain, and struggles in their hearts, and they cannot always live in the shadow of the past. Only by facing the past directly, accepting imperfection, forgiving oneself, and reconciling with the past, can one break free from the shackles of the soul, find the meaning of life, and truly be happy. As the journey progressed, Harold's story became known to more and more people. Many people were moved by his perseverance and courage, and successively joined his journey, accompanying him to walk towards Berwickshire. These people came from different places and had different identities. They saw their own shadows and the longing for making up for regrets in their hearts from Harold, and accompanied him to find spiritual redemption together. For a time, a group of people gathered around Harold. They waved the banner of pilgrims, regarded Harold as a symbol of hope and a spiritual mentor, surrounded him every day to ask questions and listen to his stories, and some even took photos and wrote articles specifically about him to share his story. At first, Harold enjoyed this feeling of being concerned and needed very much. He felt that he was finally no longer lonely, and there were people who understood and supported him. But gradually, he lost his way. The joining of these people made him forget the original intention of the journey, forget the purpose of seeing Queenie for the last time, and forget that this journey was essentially his own lonely redemption. These followers had their own ideas and purposes. They did not truly understand Harold, but only regarded him as a tool to escape reality and seek comfort. They surrounded him, chattering every day, making him unable to think and recall quietly, and unable to feel the growth and changes brought by the journey. Harold began to feel tired, irritable, and confused. He did not know what the meaning of walking like this was, whether he was walking for himself or for these followers, and even did not know if he had fallen into another kind of escape. I have to leave them and walk alone. Harold made up his mind. He knew that this journey was never a lively gathering, but a lonely redemption. He needed to be quiet and alone, talk to his own heart, and find the original intention of his departure. So, in the early morning, while everyone was still sound asleep, Harold quietly got up, put on his sailing shoes, took Queenie's letter, silently left the camp, and continued walking north alone. No farewell, no nostalgia, only a firm heart and a clear understanding. After leaving the followers, Harold's journey returned to its original state. Quiet, lonely, but full of strength. He was no longer disturbed by the outside world or influenced by others. He could think and recall quietly and feel the growth and changes brought by every step of the walk. He walked very slowly but very firmly, every step steady, moving forward steadily towards his goal, towards Queenie, and towards spiritual redemption. This lonely journey made Harold stronger and clearer. He began to enjoy loneliness and find the power of life in loneliness. He learned to accept his own mistakes and forgive his own cowardice. He learned to express his emotions and cherish the warmth around him. He understood that the meaning of life does not lie in its length, but in its width and depth, in its experiences and insights. His feet were already covered with scars. His body was exhausted, but his heart became brighter and firmer. He knew that he was getting closer and closer to Berwickshire, to Queenie, and to spiritual redemption. On the 87th day of walking, Harold finally arrived at the hospice in Berwickshire, Scotland. He was wearing worn sailing shoes and a dusty coat, his face full of exhaustion, but his eyes still firm. He followed the address on the envelope and found Queenie's ward. The ward was very quiet. The sun shone softly on the hospital bed through the window, warm and gentle. Queenie lay quietly, her face pale, her body so weak that she had almost no strength, her eyes half closed, her breathing faint. Harold walked gently to the hospital bed, looked at her quietly, and tears couldn't help falling. He wanted to wake Queenie up, wanted to say, "I'm sorry, thank you, and I'm here to see you," to her, but he didn't dare, afraid of disturbing her, afraid of losing control of his emotions. At that moment, the ward door opened and a nurse walked in. Seeing Harold, she asked gently, "Sir, are you Mr. Harold Fry? Miss Queenie has been waiting for you." Harold nodded, his voice hoarse. "Yes, I'm Harold Fry. I'm here to see Queenie." The nurse sighed softly. "Sir, you are one step too late. Miss Queenie passed away a few hours ago. Before she left, she held your photo tightly in her hand, muttered your name, and said she believed you would definitely come and had been waiting for you for a long time." "One step too late," Harold muttered to himself, his body going weak and almost falling. He had walked for 87 days, 627 miles, gone through countless hardships, only to see Queenie for the last time and say, "I'm sorry," to her personally. But in the end, he still missed her. He walked to the hospital bed, gently held Queenie's cold hand, tears falling constantly. "Queenie, I'm sorry I'm late." He apologized and repented over and over again. "It was my cowardice and escape back then that made you take all the responsibility for me, made you wait for so long. I'm sorry." He thought he would collapse in despair, would fall into endless remorse because he missed Queenie. But besides guilt and regret, there was also a touch of relief in his heart. He looked at Queenie's calm face, as if he saw her gentle smile, and heard her say to him, "Harold, I don't blame you. I'm very happy that you came. You have completed your journey and also completed your redemption." Harold knew that Queenie really did not blame him. She wrote that letter not to make him feel guilty and repentant, but to let him let go of the past and his guilt, learn to reconcile with himself, and live a good life. And he did not live up to Queenie's expectations. He completed this seemingly impossible journey, faced the past directly, accepted his imperfection, forgave himself, and finally reconciled with the past. He sat beside Queenie's hospital bed for a long time, telling her all his experiences, reflections during the journey, as well as his guilt and gratitude to her, as if Queenie was still there listening. He knew that although Queenie had left, her tenderness, tolerance, and spirit would always accompany and encourage him, letting him live a good life, love himself well, and love the people around him well. When he left the hospice, Harold's heart was calm and peaceful. He was no longer troubled by guilt and remorse, no longer felt lonely and confused. His heart was full of strength, hope, and love for life. This journey was over, and his life ushered in a brand new start. Harold's journey seems like an absurd and impossible pilgrimage, but in fact, it is a spiritual redemption journey that everyone may experience. With delicate writing, Rachel Joyce takes Harold's walk as a clue, weaving a story about regret, guilt, loneliness, love, and redemption. It not only portrays a vivid and real image of an old man, but also deeply explores the spiritual predicament of modern people and how we can find ourselves and reconcile with the past and ourselves in loneliness. In this fast-paced era, each of us is like Harold. Our edges have been smoothed by life, our steps have been trapped by trivialities, and our hearts have been bound by regrets and guilt. We are busy all day long, gradually forgetting who we are and what we want, forgetting how to love and reconcile with ourselves, hiding our true selves behind a mask, and using numbness and alienation to escape the past and problems. We are afraid of loneliness, but get used to it, eager to be understood, but afraid of being hurt, wanting to make up for our debts, but lacking the courage to take the first step. Harold's story tells us everyone has regrets, debts, pain, and struggles in their hearts. This is a normal part of life and an inevitable path of growth. We do not have to fall into endless remorse because of this, nor choose to escape and be numb because of pain. True courage is knowing that the road ahead is difficult and there will be regrets, still having the courage to face the past directly, take the first step, make up for our debts, pursue the life we want, and complete our own redemption. Many people say that Harold's journey is meaningless because he still missed Queenie in the end and failed to say, "I'm sorry" to her, personally. But I think the meaning of this journey is never in the result of seeing Queenie, but in the walk itself, in Harold's growth and changes. He finally learned to face the past directly, forgive himself, reconcile with the past, and learn to love himself well and live a good life. Just like Harold, each of us needs our own pilgrimage journey. This journey does not have to be a long hike or earth-shaking. It can be a deep reflection on a quiet night, a brave apology, a sincere companionship, or a relief of letting go of the past. It has nothing to do with others or the result. It is only about ourselves and our hearts. Its purpose is to find our true selves in loneliness, find the meaning of life and the ability to love, let go of masks and guilt, lighten our load, live a good life, and cherish the people around us. What touches me most about this book is not only Harold's perseverance and courage, but also the profound connotation about life, love, and redemption that it conveys. It tells us that there are no regrets that cannot be let go, no mistakes that cannot be forgiven, and no difficulties that cannot be overcome in life. As long as we have the courage to face the past directly, the determination to make up for our debts, the patience to reconcile with ourselves, and the love to embrace life, we will definitely be able to break free from the shackles of the soul and find our own happiness and peace. For modern people, Harold's story has profound enlightenment. In this era of anxiety and confusion, we always chase fame, fortune, and wealth, and success in the eyes of others, but forget to chase our own hearts. We always compare our lives and families, but forget that everyone's life is unique. We always regret the missed opportunities and the people we did not cherish. but forget that regret is also a part of life. It is these regrets that make us grow, learn to cherish, and live harder. We do not have to hike hundreds of miles to make a pilgrimage like Harold, but we can be like him. Bravely take the first step, face the past directly, make up for our debts, reconcile with ourselves, love ourselves well, and live a good life. We can try to let go of the obsessions and past regrets in our hearts, take off the unnecessary masks, and be our true selves. We can try to care more about the people around us, express our emotions, accompany the people we love, and not wait until we lose them to cherish them. We can try to leave a little time for ourselves in the busyness, think and feel life quietly, and find the true essence and meaning of life. Harold's journey is over, but each of our life journeys is still continuing. May we all be like Harold, brave, firm, sincere, and warm on the road of life. May we all let go of the past, accept ourselves, get along gently with the world, reconcile with ourselves, find our true selves in loneliness, find the meaning of life, and live the way we like. Tonight, we followed Harold Fry to finish this 627-mile pilgrimage journey, and also finished a spiritual redemption journey of our own. Harold told us with his perseverance and courage that the greatest redemption in life is never given by others, but fought for by ourselves. The best reconciliation is never with others, but with ourselves. No matter how many regrets and debts we have in our lives, as long as we have the courage to face the past directly and the determination to live a good life, we will definitely be able to get out of confusion and find our own happiness and peace. This book has no gorgeous rhetoric or thrilling plot, but it warms our hearts and gives us the strength to move forward with its simple words and sincere emotions. No summary can replace the original work. A good book is worth reading page by page. Good night, and wish you a sound sleep tonight. I'm Time for Bed. If you like it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I look forward to our next encounter.